All right, we're going to get going here on the discussion meet. So everybody come in and sit down. We'd like to welcome everybody to the final round of the Idaho Farm Bureau Federation Young Farmers and Ranching Discussion Meet. I'm Kyle Wade. I'm from Bannock County. I'll be serving as room chair for this round at this time. Out of respect, will everybody please turn your cell phones off? Also, keep distractions as minimal as possible to allow for full concentration by the competitors. Serving as moderator for this round will be Chet Nicholas of Bingham County. Serving as timekeeper will be Cheryl Rockenbert. Gochner. The judges, timer, and competitors have been briefed as to the rules of the competition. I yield control of this competition to your moderator.
Thank you, Kyle. We appreciate all of you taking the time to attend this competition. Your support is appreciated by the competitors. As moderator, I will not attempt to control or direct this discussion. Remember, this discussion is meant to simulate a committee meeting, not a panel discussion, with point, counterpoint, and an active moderator. As such, I will not intervene unless or until disparaging or inappropriate remarks are made. With that in mind, the burden is on the competitors to moderate themselves and conduct themselves in a cooperative and congenial manner. Please no writing until all competitors are seated. You may start writing now. The competitors are Denton Perkins, Jasa Fillmore, Cole Likely, and Andrew Mickelson. Tonight we're going to do the topic, question number 3. Studies show more farmers and farm families are experiencing stress and mental health issues. What can farmers, ranchers, and Farm Bureau do to proactively promote good mental health in both themselves and their communities? We will begin this discussion with 1 minute of quiet time, during which each competitor will be able to prepare their 30-second opening statement. Following the opening statements, they will have 25 minutes of open discussion, followed by 1 minute of quiet time for the competitors to prepare their 1-minute closing statements. Official time is kept by the timekeeper. At this time, competitors, you now have 1 minute to prepare your opening statements. Time has been called. Competitors, in voluntary order, make your 30-second opening statements. Please stand and direct your opening statements to the audience. The timer will indicate when 30 seconds have elapsed by holding up a red card. You may now begin.
The tractor's broken, the pivot's stuck, you fix it. The cows are sick, the fence is down, you fix it. Your leg is fractured, your kids have the flu, you fix it. You're depressed, you have anxiety and stress. Why isn't the answer the same? Agriculture is the #1 industry for suicides, and while we could talk endlessly about the amazing mental health resources that are out there, we should be focusing on access and utilization of these resources and what Farm Bureau's role is in that, which is what I hope to discuss today. Thank you.
A little over a year ago, we received a call that nobody wants to receive. One of our family had just lost the battle with mental health that they had been fighting alone. None of us were even aware of the struggle, yet 1 in 5 Americans suffers from a mental illness. That is 1 in 5 too many. I look forward to discussing how we as Farm Bureau can help fight the too often silent battle that is mental illness, and how we can help our friends and neighbors who may be in the midst of a fight.
Mental health and stress management have been taboo topics in the agricultural industry for too long. It's time that we as Farm Bureau and as young farmers and ranchers do something to stop that trend. I'm guessing our discussion today is going to revolve around the resources available and the delivery of those resources to our producers. The Farm Bureau is positioned perfectly to take this challenge head on. With over 80,000 members in the state of Idaho alone, our greatest resource for combating stress management with farmers is each and every one of us.
In the fall of 2017, we were having a great potato harvest when I got the phone call that an employee had been injured. I rushed over to find the employee non-responsive, and I immediately started CPR, but it was futile. That employee passed away. Over the next months, every time the phone rang, I got anxiety, and I withdrew from my regular routine due to depression. The mental illness was real. Stigmatism or not, I needed help. There are many other farmers that are in that same situation that also need help.
You have heard the opening statements. The competitors may now proceed with the discussion. Competitors, please direct your discussion to your fellow panel members.
I appreciate all of you sharing your personal stories, and we can see that there's really, it is a real issue, and we've each been touched by that. I think I'd love to start out by talking about, we could focus on resources, and maybe we'll come back to that, but what about the access? Why aren't people taking advantage of all these resources like the ones that you mentioned, Cole?
Jason, I was just going to say, I think that, it's so important. I just talked in my opening statement about we lost an uncle who was a farmer, production agriculture, and initially we all had the question, why? Why did he end his life? Everything was good with the farm. There was no financial troubles. Honestly, none of us knew. And for the past year, we've all tried to ask that. But as I was preparing for this discussion meet, I decided, I don't know if the answer is why did he do it, or the question is why did he do it. The question is why didn't he get help? Right. And that goes back into what you're saying, I think, is about these resources. And so in order to figure out, maybe why he didn't seek help, I actually sat down with about a dozen production agricultural farmers and asked them what might be a barrier that would keep them from getting mental health help. And the answers ranged very widely. I mean, everything from cost to time, shame, embarrassment, the stigma, the fix it, man, like you mentioned. But there was not one set answer. And I really kind of started to see that I think that the answer varies so widely. And, I think that's the first thing we have to really discuss as a group, and I'm looking forward to discussing it with you, is what causes this problem? It is the leading occupation. And Andrew, I want to come to you in just a second because you have this experience. It's obviously very traumatic. And I'd like to know, what caused that problem and what finally got you to go get help?
Well, so I really love where we're going, and I think we have a great direction. I know one of the big things for me, I think one of the first barriers is that stigmatism. Definitely that concern and that worry about it. I know when I went through this, I was not jumping up and down to go and see a counselor or talk to anybody or even try to find any help. Right. We're farmers. We're tough. We don't need help. You fall down in the dirt, you brush it off and get going again. But it was through the help of family members and friends that started to say, are you okay? Is there something wrong? I think you need to go see a counselor. And it was things like that that finally got me to the point that I was ready to get that help. But as I look at the resources, and I went to the AFBF page and things like that, the resources are kind of there, and there's some that's helpful, and I think there's good things in there, but it's really hard to find the good things in my experience.
Yeah, I want to come back to that, but I'd love to hear what Cole has to say first.
Absolutely, and I think that those are great points, Andrew. And I think that there's a couple things to piggyback off of that. In terms of the help that we've had, or why we're not seeking the help that we have right now, is I think because of past experiences with, whether that's at a convention, whether that's seeing a speaker talking about suicide, talking about the worst case scenario. I think it freaks people out, to be honest. It scares people, and so if that's the only conversation that we're having is here's what the end result is, instead of how can we prevent it, what are the stressors that are on you right now, then I think that that's just going to scare people off. I think people aren't going to come forward to Farm Bureau. They're not going to come forward to these conferences and ask, like, can we have some, can I have some help?
Cole, I think that one of the things that I realized, though, as I looked at it, is we're scared to go and look at it and get the help ourselves. But I think as we've gone through it, as I've gone to some of the trainings, as I went to the discussion today, one of the things is getting the training for the ones around you. Getting trained your spouse or your family members. Because for me, that's what made the difference, is when a family member saw, my routine's changed. I'm grumpy, I'm irritable, I'm not happy like I used to, I'm not doing the things I love. It was things like that that someone else saw. And so I think that one of the keys, one of the most important things, is those that are willing to, let's get them looking at the trainings. Let's get them starting to look for the signs in others, because I think that's really what's going to take. It's really hard to look at yourself and say, I think something's wrong with me. But when Cole comes up and say, hey, Andrew, you've been my friend for forever. Something's a little off. I'm here for you. Let's find you some help. That's what starts it.
I think you're totally on the right track. And while these mental health workshops or sessions have been at farm conferences for quite a while now, I still hear people joking, even here today at this conference, oh, you should have gone to that mental health workshop. You sound stressed. What's stress? That was the response. But I think it's important, because even if people are joking about it, they're still talking about it. And so even if it's in jest of like, oh, you should go seek help, it's still there. There's, I wonder if even at the county level, we could start plugging in small things like mental health minute at the county board meeting. And it might be something people roll their eyes at, but at least it's an open door for a conversation. And it might be that open door that your friend or neighbor down the road could say, oh, what'd you think of that mental health minute? I am really worried about you. You've been missing out on things lately. How are you doing? And they could open that door, even if it's we kind of have to use humor to mask the uncomfortableness in agriculture.
And Jasa, I was thinking about that same thing. We all are afraid to seek help, and I've caught a common theme in what we've all talked about. I thought back to, personal experiences for me are what helped me learn. And not to draw it all to me, but I was thinking back to when I was just starting teaching agriculture. I was the week before school started, and I was diagnosed with cancer. And, that just upended my world. Here I am with a young family. I start a new job next week. I'm told I have to have surgery on the first day of school and then undergo chemotherapy. And I through that whole process, it was hard, and I didn't seek help. And at the end of it, I thought through it, and I thought, I'm a pretty tough guy. I did pretty good, and I got through that. But then I realized I didn't seek help, but help certainly sought me out. And, whether it was my co-teacher covering so many of my classes and helping me because I'm a new teacher, I'm trying to prepare classes from a distance, or my family or my neighbor mowing my lawn, all these things help sought me out. And I think that is a huge key to this whole issue, is that, we are tough people. And we are resilient people, and farmers are tough and resilient people, but we've got to seek them out. The resources are there. Sometimes they're hard to find, and I hope we can continue to discuss that, but we need to seek out those who are in need of our help.
Another issue you mentioned, Denton, was affordability. So in Utah, Utah Farm Bureau Federation, they have made it a member benefit to the free telehealth in the state of Utah. So there's no co-pays, there's no call fees. Any Farm Bureau member can call in and get not only physical health help, but also mental health help through telehealth. Now that brings us to things like rural broadband access, which we were just joking about, but that's a tangible thing that Farm Bureau can do to increase access.
As I went and looked at the web page where they list the resources by state, there wasn't one like that for Idaho. It was like the Veterans Crisis Suicide Prevention Hotline, and there wasn't a lot of room in there in the middle. And I think that if you're having a tough day, do you want to call the suicide hotline? No, but you need to have somebody to help you cope with it. And so I think that's a great idea.
And I want to touch on that, Andrew. The policy book in Idaho, I found, Farm Bureau is doing great things, and right in their policy book, they say, one policy, and they say that we support mental health and behavioral health, and Farm Bureau does as a national organization, absolutely. But I think in the state of Idaho, a specific action item that we can have is, let's add to that policy book. How do we support it? It's great that we do support it, But, do we support it by adding telemedicine? I mean, I can go to the movie theater for cheaper, or I can go to Lagoon for cheaper, but I can't get mental health for cheaper. I think that maybe is a little more important.
There's no policy for telehealth in the Idaho Farm Bureau policy book.
No.
So that's something we could do right now. We could propose that to add to it.
I think that's a great idea, and Jason, thank you for bringing that up. I think that that's so important and a great example of something that Idaho can actually do. I'd like to back up and look at it a little bit broader for a second. So I've identified through our conversation and through my research, I've kind of identified the two trainings or resources that we need to have available. One, like you said, Andrew, is for those people around us. On one hand, it's the people, the friends and family that see us every day. On the other, it could be our allied industry. It could be our agribusinesses, our seed salesmen, our fertilizer salesmen, our bankers, our Farm Bureau reps. People who see us out every day. I think that would be a great way to push that. On the other hand, I think it's important that we provide resources for the farmers who are struggling with mental health, and I know that or stress. And I know that that's hard because it's hard to recognize those stressors or recognize those things that is showing poor mental health within us. But what we can do is more preventative. We can partner with agencies, or we can, whatever that looks like, to provide resources for those upstream stressors. Do you have any ideas, Andrew?
So, Cole, you hit a lot of that on the nose. Some of the trainings I looked at were actually sponsored by like Northwest Farm Credit, because the banks, these other guys, they know that it's important. But one of the things is I looked at the webpage, and they had these trainings, and they're really good. I'm only halfway through, but I mean, they're hitting on everything. But I think the key is to make it easy to get to. For me to do it, I had to go make an account at the University of Michigan.
The Michigan one?
I had to go do all this stuff. I had to jump through all these hoops, and I'm sitting there saying, my dad, grandfather, they would have just said,
Forget it.
I'm out with it. But then I've also seen other trainings, church stuff. They made it so that it's one click. You go to the website. It walks you through. It's easy. It's on an iPhone. It's whatever. I don't need to sign in for something like this. I want something simple that, you could pull up and be like, hey, just watch this brief video, or even add it to some of our videos, like so you could put it on your feed. Have like a 10-second, 20-second, You're stressed.
So what if we brought that help to where the farmers are at? We could bring it to them in the tractor cab through telehealth, or why don't we embed it into places where they hang out, at the coffee shop or at the cafe? So there was a study done in Los Angeles at barbershops, and this was targeted toward black men that have really high risk of heart disease, and they embedded health professionals in those barbershops, and they would spend like a day or two a week there, and they would get to know, and the big thing was the trust and that stigma. So they would get to know the patrons of the barbershop and build relationships, and then they could ask those questions like, hey, have you exercised this week? And then they even brought pharmacy services. So what if you went and picked up your feed and were able to get to know a therapist or a counselor?
Well, one of the cool things is just outside here, when we were talking about member benefits, I can't remember her name, but she's talking to me about, they have like a Google Home whatever thing there. And she said that on that, they have little advertisements and little things about the benefits. What about little things like that just pop up and say, feeling a little stressed?
Yeah.
Try a walk, try something like that, where we could get it. It wouldn't cost a lot of money, but we could put it in places like the feed shop or the coffee shop, something like that.
And I think going along with that, I really like the message that you're putting across, that we need to go to where the people are. Because let's face it, our older generations, they're not on the internet, they're not on social media, they're not in so many of these places that we're trying to reach out to them at this time. I was just reading a story that I thought was kind of funny. There was some lady in Florida, and she dialed the wrong number trying to call her granddaughter, and she'd always dial the wrong area code, and she called this dude in Rhode Island. And they developed this friendship, and he was Mike from Rhode Island, and she was Gladys from Florida. And it got to the point where they would just call each other and just check in. They knew nothing about one another. And as I thought about that, I thought, that's just a silly, funny little thing that they're partners. But I thought how applicable it is to what we're talking about today. Because if we can have partners, we have partners that we see every day anyway, that we just check in with from time to time. How powerful would that be? We say, hey, I also went to that train, I think all of us did over here, and she was talking about how she was talking about how, there was that person who was struggling, and they just noticed that he was acting different, and they just talked to him, and it took a few days to break him down, but, it was simply talking to him that made that big difference. And talking to people is how I think we're going to reach the majority of this agriculture audience that we have. And it's not necessarily going to be all through social media and those kind of things. And so your messages that you're putting across, I think, are all great ideas that should be implemented into policy of how will we take this to the people.
And I think that that's a great point. And I think this discussion about accessibility and getting in front of farmers is very, very poignant. A couple things. One, I don't know if you guys are aware, there's a kind of a coalition together on the national level between the American Farm Bureau Federation, National Farmers Union, and Farm Credit, looking at rural resiliency and pushing this mental health farmer stress program. And there's a great example, 3 very different organizations across the United States with very different representatives who all see mental health as very, very important. And these are some of the representatives from those companies that are on farm every day, and that is something tangible that we can do with the representatives, our Farm Bureau staff that we see, at least monthly, with our loan officers that we see, a couple times a year, maybe sooner, getting them trained up looking for the signs of poor mental health or stress, I think is very tangible and something that we can implement tomorrow.
I think you're right. My husband works in an allied industry, and I think if we said, Farm Bureau, our county Farm Bureau is going to sponsor a mental health first aid clinic, and we invite all of our allied industry partners and explain to them that role of helper, because I think that's they're on the farm where, even family members might not see those farmers and ranchers during their most stressful times as much as their allied industry partners.
So I love that idea. I love that idea of partnershiping. We've covered the training a little bit. We've really talked about how to get that out. One of the things I want to come back to, though, a little bit is, Jace, you brought up the telehealth and the access to that. I was talking with a nurse practitioner just in our area, and she says that as she's dealing with people, she's having people coming to her every day saying, I need help. I need someone to help me. How can I do it? And she said that right now she's 4 to 6 months before she can get people into a counselor. Unless they say that they're going to kill themselves the next day, it's really hard to get somebody into there.
And then it's super traumatic with a police car ride and into a hospital.
But, telehealth is a great idea there, but the problem is you still have to have counselors.
Yep.
And we have a shortage there. Telehealth would be great if you're out in the middle of Arco and there's no counselors for an hour or two away. All of a sudden you can do that, but maybe we've got an underlying issue of when we've identified that somebody needs help, somebody's struggling, there's not the resource for them to go to the next step. And so maybe that's what we need to be looking about addressing is finding more counselors and I don't know how to do it, but maybe that's
one thing that I've seen is that organizations that offer scholarships, they're broadening their focus from just ag majors to those that support the industry in medicine, in the legal environment. They're realizing that we can't just continue to support students that are majoring in ag, even though that's important. We need to support our people from rural backgrounds that understand the issues and have connections to the farm and ranch, and that can give back to the industry in their chosen profession.
Yeah, I think that, and it really, in my mind, and I feel like we're doing such a good job as this group at talking about specific action items. Really it comes back to policy and making policy, because that's what Farm Bureau is it's a political lobbyist, basically, organization, right? We advocate for farmers and ranchers and to preserve their way of life. And, the American Farm Bureau has a lot of policy in their book talking about how they support various things. Just this morning we were talking about the meat packing one, and they have a specific policy in there that says they will advocate to help get more people into the meat packing profession. I don't see any reason why we couldn't do something like that with mental health and counseling, that kind of thing, and putting those resources into that, because that is an important part. Yeah, practitioners, et cetera, et cetera. I, too, have my mother-in-law is a PA, and she reiterated the same exact thing you're saying, Andrew, that, there is a big shortage in our area, and telemedicine's not going to solve all
So could
that.
that be a member benefit to offer free counseling and therapy to our Farm Bureau members?
Well, the problem is
mean,
we
still
could try to
access.
we could try to do that, but the problem is getting it. And I also think, from my experience meeting with counselors, some of them don't get farming.
Yeah.
Some of them say, well, cut out the stressors. Oh, just get rid of that. And sometimes you say, well, that would be really nice. I guess I'll
harvest that
I'll go
crop.
work at McDonald's so I can have a 40-hour-a-week job. But maybe as part of that, it needs to be more than just scholarships, but maybe it needs to be a focus on farm-specific counseling or counselors that are trained specifically to deal with farmers.
I see that as, sorry.
Go ahead.
I see that as to me, that's a perfect profession for maybe a spouse that chooses to stay at home. If they're raising a family and have access to childcare a couple hours a week, they could work from home with the advent of better internet, and they could use those skills. I know a farmer teacher or farmer counselor spouse combination is pretty common, it seems like, and we could make better use of those people
Yeah,
that do understand.
Recently, the American Farm Bureau, this is one of their policies, but the USDA announced a big grant, the Farm and Ranch Stress Network, that's $7 million that is being put into providing more of this health care that we need in these rural areas to people that have a hard time getting it. And I think that would be a great thing that could be added into Idaho policy, that we could utilize more, apply for these grants and that kind of thing to help provide these incentives we're talking about.
And I think we have a great example already. I mean, we've struggled with rural veterinarians in the state of Idaho for so long. In the Idaho policy book, we have policy pushing for the increased number of vets from Idaho to come back to Idaho, and there's loan forgiveness programs, things like that. So I think that we have some great examples that we can build on, just like that rural veterinarian example, to bring those, whether it's mental health professionals, whether it's just healthcare providers, back into our rural communities.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that we can continue to do all these things. And something that I feel like I want to touch on a little before, as we still have time, is one big word that stood out to me in that question as I went through it, is it says to proactively combat mental health. The statistics show that it takes about 11 years from the onset of symptoms to the time that people first begin treatment. That is a long time to deal with that. In that time, things are probably going to get worse. Your farm productivity, all those things are going to go down. And as I thought about that, and I kind of have a unique occupation. For my living, I raise about 120 head of adolescent humans, because I teach school, and yours are just a little older than mine. And so I kind of see an interesting side of things, and mental health is a struggle at a young age. 17% of adolescents struggle with mental health. It is the 4th largest cause of death in adolescents, suicide is. And so as I thought about this, we can start young. Kids are teachable. That's where we can break that stigma, and I think that can really be one of these keys to us proactively combating mental health as we go forward, is starting with our youth, starting earlier on and breaking these stigmas, because those are going to continue to endure unless we break that cycle.
So here's an idea. We use the farmers as the teachers, just like in our Mac trailer model. Why can't the farmers be teaching kids about mental health on the farm?
I don't know how good of an expert I am on it, though. That's one concern that I have.
Give them the resources, write the lesson plan. Even if they don't feel like they're the expert, we learn the most by teaching. So if we can break that stigma by having those farmers be the teachers, maybe that will open that door.
And I think I might just jump in here. I think that's a great idea. I love that. And sometimes it doesn't need to be complete professional to come in and say, here's what's wrong with you. And I mean, I've had personal experiences with anxiety and mental health, and it's a lot of times it's just a friend saying what's wrong. And I think in the agricultural industry, we've never been open to saying, are you okay? How are you doing? So one thing that I think we can do at Farm Bureau and our commodity conventions is maybe putting off a little time for just farmers to get together and ask. Maybe throw a few topics out there for them to get started, but having that conversation around, what are the stresses in your life? Well, those are the stresses in my life, and I can relate to that. This whole idea of empathy and farmers understanding each other, I think, is so important.
Thank you for bringing that up, Cole. I think about, for all of us need, not as many as some people want to take, but mental health days, right? And we're just really kind of trying to grow our county YF&R, and as me and the co-chair were discussing what can we do to really help these people in our stage of life, one of the big things we're thinking of is, we just need time with people in our same situation, our same station in life. If we can sit down, we can talk to them, we can interact with them, we can be partners with them, that's going to have a big effect. We don't necessarily need a bunch of, not that professionals don't have their place, but we can make a difference individually as we partner with and work with one another. And I see this being something that can grow organically as we continue to give people opportunities to kind of unwind and to continue to rely on one another for that support.
We missed out on that the last couple of years.
I love that, and one of the great things that I saw from our District 1 is as we had that discussion, we talked about mental health. What happened afterwards is I saw people talking about it. And so I think one of the big things going forward is continuing to find places to talk about it, because now, the rest of the night at dinner, everyone's going to have the opportunity to talk about it. And it's not going to be an awkward thing. It's not bringing it up out of the blue. We've made it a natural part of the conversation. So I think one of the big things going forward is to keep it at the forefront, keep it at something positive, keep it something that we're talking about.
I think you're spot on, Matt. That whole open door concept, and I could embed that into agricultural curriculum from ag in the classroom all the way through high school and college could be a focus on mental health. If we can save just one person in a rural community because we've opened that door to talk about it, that's a success in my book.
Absolutely. One thing is, as we wrap up here that I think is important is how do we get in front of people to say that? This is a great conduit to have that conversation, but our farmers and ranchers, the entirety of them are not here. What do you guys think about getting in front of them so they get this message as well as the people that are here?
I think that, as we continue to take these things out, I'm only one person, but I know a lot of farmers and I know a lot of ranchers, and I teach 120 kids every day. I, as one person, can have a pretty big impact as I continue to just strive to say, hey, there doesn't need to be a stigma here.
Right.
I'm a listening ear. You can rely on me. I'm not going to necessarily give you life advice because I don't know how to fix all your problems, but I will listen to your problems and I can try to direct you to where you can get help. Because, in this room, we have 100 people at least, but you think about all those 100 people, they at least know another 100.
Right.
And that is going to expand exponentially.
The true social network, right? Forget social media. Let's just talk to people and ask our neighbors how they're doing, and utilize functions through Farm Bureau, our county meetings, workshops that we put on, banquets that we sponsor to bring that up.
And especially as COVID's we're getting tired of it, we're moving on, as we're starting to go back to churches and
Right.
coffee houses or whatever, taking those opportunity to catch back up because we weren't able to see those people before. We weren't able to see their signs of maybe depression or going through mental illness. And so I think it's a great opportunity right now as we're moving forward to keep our eyes open for those.
I think even like a little PSA at like the auction house, some people are at an auction house because they're stressed and they're selling all their animals and getting out of it or something, but
Time has been called. Please prepare your closing statements for the audience. I ask that the audience remain silent for 1 minute to aid the competitors in their preparation. Please put down your pencils, and in voluntary order, please stand and give your 1 minute closing statement.
We've talked about so many great things, and I think this has been extremely productive. Mental health is extremely important, with over 20% of our nation battling with mental health. We discussed increasing resources, increasing access, utilizing things that are already in place, putting more information on the Idaho directory for resources that are there. We also talked about adding specific policies to our Farm Bureau books that direct, whether it be telemedicine, supporting member benefits for increased access to healthcare because cost can be an issue, or even just encouraging participation in counseling and those other careers that support our agricultural workers that are so important. I think that now is the time to start. With rolling policy meetings that we've just implemented in the state of Idaho, we don't have to wait till next year to do this. We can get going right now. It's my hope that we can all be the Mike from Rhode Island or the Gladys from Florida for somebody who around us who is fighting with mental health, and that we can help them.
Win, lose, or draw, I really don't care. The fact that we're having this conversation right here, right now, is so good. It's so important, and it makes me really happy. I think there's some really cool things that we talked about today. We talked about resources. We talked about how to get in front of our farmers. And I took two separate points from that. One is the professionals, getting the professionals in front of our farmers and ranchers. We have a lack. Jason had a great idea. Utah has a member benefit to have this telehealth and allowing our rural areas access to this mental health resources. But maybe it's leaning on our example of bringing veterinarians back to rural communities. Maybe we can do that to get our mental health professionals back into our communities. The second one is getting those around us trained and ready and available to listen to our farmers and ranchers that need help. I think that that's very important. Each one of us has a story. Each one of you has a story. I would highly encourage you, outside of this room, talk to at least one person. Thank you.
We've seen how these 4 people up here have been touched by mental health, and there are countless stories out there of how mental health has affected your life and maybe your loved ones. We've shared lots of ideas and even some resources available to our producers and talked about Farm Bureau's role in that. So let's start with what we're good at and enact some good policy. Add to our policy book something that incites action, not just warm, fuzzy feelings about we support, mental health or we support telehealth. That one's not even in there. But let's get some action items into our policy book. Let's encourage our county boards and give them the resources to host some workshops and bring in professionals that are partnered with Farm Bureau to make a difference in our local communities and rely on those allied industry partners to be trained and be those watchdogs for us. Let's promote the profession of counseling and bring that back to our rural communities. And most of all, let's just check on people. Like Cole said, have a conversation at your table, and even if it's joking and in jest and you have to use that to cover up the uncomfortable feeling, have that conversation and don't be afraid to check in. Thank you.
I appreciate the conversation that we had today, that we were able to get the ball rolling and start talking about this. I also am grateful that when I was going through struggles with this, I had family and friends that reached out to me that helped me to get the help I need. Today, though, there were 3 things I really took away, and we did a really good job of kind of summing them up. Number 1, I think we've got to work on that stigmatism that comes with mental health. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to have the conversations. I hope we keep having them in places like Discussion Meet and at these round table things. Let's keep talking about them. Number 2, I think we got to keep working on the training and having those resources available. Let's make sure that people know what signs to look for in their spouses or family members or friends or even bankers, that they can be watching for their farmers to see what they need. And number 3, whether it's with AFBF or with the Idaho Farm Bureau, find ways to get the availability and access to professional help so that when someone is to that point, they don't have to wait 4 to 6 months, that they can find something immediately, that they can get in and get the help without feeling embarrassed about it, without feeling like it's going to be too long to matter. Thank you.
Let's show these competitors our appreciation for a job well done. At this time, I will return control of this competition to the room chair, Kyle.
Thank you, Chet, for a well-run competition. Also thank the judges and the competitors. The winner of this competition will move forward to the AFBF meeting in Atlanta, Georgia, February 7th through the 11th to represent Idaho. At this time, we would also like to have the judges report to the tabulation room, if you could do so now. And then competitors, if you guys in voluntary order would let us know a little bit about yourself, just take a couple minutes, tell us who you are, where you're from.
My name is Andrew Mickelson. I'm from just north of Idaho Falls. I am married. My wife, I think she just ran out. I have the 2 screaming kids that you hear everywhere. I am a 6th or 7th generation Iowa potato farmer. I'm not sure. It's so hard to go back and actually tell who was starting, but I'm happy to be here. Our family, we're all about potatoes. We grow seed potatoes. We grow commercial potatoes. We pack them. We process them. So pretty much we eat, drink, and sleep potatoes. I'm glad to be a part of this Farm Bureau. I got started really with the discussion meet. Years ago, it kind of got me going. I got through at districts. I made it to state, and from then I've kind of been hooked and got going again, went to the conventions. I love the House of Delegates, and so this is a great opportunity to meet all of you and talk about these issues.
I'm Cole Likely, first and foremost husband to Anna Pratt Likely, so first of all. Anna and I live on on my family's operation in South Central Idaho in Jerome, beef cow, calf operation. Her family is that way as well, so we're kind of surrounded and stuck in it, but we love it. My day job, I work for a company called Denton North America as a producer relations manager for their dairies in Idaho and Utah. And I was serious in my closing remarks that, like, I don't care what happens with this, that as long as anybody, maybe just a few of you in this room, heard something that you heard from one of us say and take it home, like, mental health and farm stress is so important to me, and I see it impact so many families. So even if you can save one person or just take some stress off one person, I highly, highly encourage it.
My name's Jasa Fillmore, and I live in the little community of Clover in Twin Falls County, and I'm a Twin Falls County native. I have taught agriculture at both the high school and college level for the past 13 years. I'm currently teaching at the College of Southern Idaho in Twin Falls, and we just started a collegiate Farm Bureau chapter there at CSI, which has been really fun. My family has always been involved in agriculture. Well, my parents and then myself were hobbyists, and my kids race 4-H animals. But we also started a new venture in agritourism. So we have a campsite on our little farm and invite people we've had all over the world come and stay with us. And my kids get to practice advocacy and teach them about living out in the country. So that's been really fun. And I used to teach at an alternative high school where mental health was a really big issue, to the point where, I mean, I've hauled kids to emergency rooms because they're in crisis, and I would echo what Cole said, and and Denton both, to just take away the awkwardness and ask the question. And thank you all for being here and listening.
Wow, this was a great competition. Thank you all. My name is Denton Perkins. I'm from St. Anthony, Idaho. I also teach high school. This is my mental health day, getting away from high schoolers. So thank you for being part of that with me. I've taught high school for 5 years now. Have a couple kids, and I guess you could call me a hobby farmer. I raise pat goats, way too many of them. But I've just been involved with Farm Bureau for the past couple of years, and it's been a great experience, a good opportunity to network, and I look forward to continue my development with them.
Thank you all very much. And thanks for being here and having a great competition with us. We also like to thank the audience for coming and supporting us. Just so y'all know, we will announce the winner at the very, very end of dinner tonight, so y'all can wait that long. But we'll adjourn this meeting.